Now then, Guz, as a former teacher, we'd like to know what your thoughts are on this next film. So have a look. It's all about a controversial method of discipline that many schools are now using.
Maureen Bigg was also a teacher and she's been to try it out for herself. Have a look.
I've been made to sit here for an hour. My friends are all in lesson, but I'm in an isolation booth.
Isolation booths are just one of the tools that schools are now using to tackle unruly behaviour. And Ian Young, the principal here at Rainford High School, is one of those who uses the controversial method.
The school has always had an area where you could isolate a young person. For example, you have a serious incident, we need to investigate, we need to keep those young people apart or out of lessons. Then they can do a piece of work with a member of staff who's in there about restoring the situation. And the vast majority of young people spend less than a day in that area.
I used to be a teacher and I'm from a family of teachers, so this has been a huge matter of discussion and debate within my house. Have you noticed that the use of isolation booths has had a positive impact on behaviour across the school?
What I'd say is having a system that's built on culture, consistency, clarity and compassion, and the booths, the isolation is part of that system, has worked and improved behaviour in the school. It's not cruel, it's about caring, it's about thinking about what's happened and about how we can put it right.
What is the reaction from parents if they find out their child's been in an isolation booth?
If parents come and raise a question about why is my child being isolated, we discuss it and we explain why we feel that's the appropriate thing to do.
Government guidance in England says that schools are free to decide how long pupils should be kept in isolation, but they should be there no longer than is necessary. Lindsay's child has experienced isolation booths. She and partner Steve aren't convinced that they're the answer.
Personally, I've never liked the idea of isolation. If it's repetitive behavioural pattern, maybe there should be somebody there to get to an understanding to stop the child from entering isolation in the first place.
I think if they've been disruptive or violent, then maybe some time out is needed for them to calm down. But I don't agree with isolation in regards to certain reasons. So say if a child's not brought the right piece of equipment in school or they've forgotten a piece of homework.
If we don't want to isolate them, what do you suggest would be better?
Ask why and get to the root problem of why.
Speak to the parents.
Contact the parents, speak to the child. Personally, I think they should include, not exclude. It's as simple as that.
The Department for Education says that on average, pupils lose up to 38 days a year due to low-level disruption. So clearly, schools need help. The first Lose the Booths conference in Leeds has been set up to look at whether there are better alternatives.
I'm a head teacher and I'm here because we removed the booths in our school in the summer holidays. They weren't making a difference. We've now got pods with bean bags, some regulation toys, and they can use it just as a space to calm if they need to.
I'm here as a secondary school teacher in a school which we do have some challenging students, and it's just to give us some new strategies, some new ideas.
These are kids, I've got kids myself, most of you have. You don't want your child coming home and saying they've been in a booth, in isolation.
I think when we look back in 20 years, we'll see it's quite humiliating for a child to spend a week, 2 weeks, sat in an isolated room with a booth this wide. I'm not naive enough to think that a child should never really move from a room. So I've got behaviour policies in school. They'll go to the next door class teacher for a 10-minute reflection time. If something escalates, then my senior leaders will get involved to get them back in the classroom and back learning.
The school that I'm currently working in is using the isolation booths to get children to think about the behaviour. But I think from being here today that there is another way that we can do that.
It's clear that all schools have to deal with disruptive behaviour. But at least by having these discussions, we're highlighting the challenges teachers face and looking at the best way to support pupils.
So what do we think then, Guz? Isolation booths?
For me as a teacher, I did it for 4 years. And what me and my colleagues often found is that these old school methods of isolating a student seldomly worked, because young people thrive in company where they can interact, where they can discover who they are. You know, I understand, and this is a reality that our teachers face up and down the country. There are violent acts that take place in a school setting, and you might have to remove somebody as a result of that behaviour. But if you're using it for anything else other than that, man, we're failing to inspire, really, I would say. And, you know, facing a wall is some old school thing that we used to do when we were at school, you know? Never did any good. Isolation does no good in prisons either. So, you know, to inspire them is a much more prevalent thing, I think.
Trouble is, when you've got big classes and you've got one teacher, I mean, you know, from your perspective, how did you actually used to control any, you know, pupils that were being a little bit unruly? But, you know...
I'm probably not the best example, bro, but, like, what I'm going to say... Ask Ofsted what they think. No, but like, for me, I found that being myself and interacting with them on a level that they understood was really important. So the term waste man was exemplary, as opposed to this old school method of, excuse me, 3, 2, 1, which is what we came up with. Very rarely works. Just put it on them and be like, yo, why you being a waste man, bro? Shall I contact your dad right now? I'll text him. I got a phone in my pocket. I'll text your dad right now and tell you what you're up to. And, you know, those methods of them ensuring that, you know, we're not to be joked around with and we're on the level with them was really important.
Were you quite a comedian when you were a teacher as well then, or did you was that the very, you know, the serious girls, or were you still there? Nah,
bro, listen, honestly, like I am now, I was in a classroom. Really? And the kids can attest to that wherever I am. You know, but I just felt that to be the most natural way, because to be honest with them, you get their honesty back, you know? If I was going to try and pretend to be... There's this weird thing in teaching I was told when I was training, which is, don't smile at the children until the Christmas holiday. So when you start at the start of a September term, don't smile at them till then. I was like, Uncle, you're mad, mate. Keep your advice to yourself. I ain't got time for that, Mr. Stevens. So you just got to employ the kind of best techniques that you think you have.
Your pupils must have been gutted when you left.
I bet
I'm
for a
sure.
teacher. Now, Regina, what were you like in school? Were you a good student, or were you a bit naughty?
I mean, I was all right. I did try hard. I really did try hard. But I had a few teachers that would just immediately, they would hear noise and they'd be like, Nadine, out you get outside.